Episode 24, Julian, and welcome to An American Journey, the podcast about all things America. And what's on our agenda today, Julian?
We are going to discuss the city of Denver, and we're going to discuss drive-thrus.
Okay. Now, I immediately have to say, Julian, we're going to have to speak wider than the city of Denver, because when I go to Colorado, I don't just go to Denver. So I'm going to widen it slightly. But am I right in thinking it's some time since you've been there?
I've been there a few times, but I haven't been there for 25 years.
Gosh.
The information I have may be, yours may well be a lot more current than mine.
And I think Denver is the city in America, other than New York, I've been the most to. So it was one of my first overseas trips with the beloved. We went to Denver.
Okay.
And when I said I'm going to widen it, because she loves the mountains, and in particular going to Breckenridge. And do you know what, Julian? I think it's more to do with the shops than the mountains, if I was brutally honest.
Okay. It wasn't our first trip to America, but it was one of our early trips to America. We swapped a home with a couple in Western Colorado. So they had our apartment in London, and we had their nice ranch in Western Colorado. So I'm definitely more familiar with that side of Colorado than the Denver side. But wherever you are in Colorado, there's always mountains nearby.
Yeah. So this was ahead of B&B then, was it? Or Airbnb? You were doing house swaps back 25 years ago, did you say?
Yeah, this was years ago. There was a book you got. You had to complete a paper form and tell them all about your house. And I think maybe there might have been even one or two pictures you were allowed. And then you sent that off. And then this company compiled a book. And then everyone received the book at the same time. And people would then write to each other. This is pre-email. And then you would get all these letters from around the world saying, hey, I live in Ghana and I would really like to swap with your home in London. And anyway, we did a deal with a couple in Western Colorado, in the town of Grand Junction, Colorado. And we spent a month there. Very good.
Okay. And I have been through Grand Junction. So where do you want to start on Denver? The Mile High City, Julian.
Do you know why it is called the Mile High City?
Because presumably it's very high in the mountains. A mile maybe, Julian.
It's exactly a mile on the 13th step of the Capitol building in Denver.
Which I have been to, and is a place to visit. Excellent dome.
Is it?
Yes.
So what do you like about Denver then, Michael?
Oh, sorry, I thought we were going to do a bit of history first of all, Julian. You normally shower some facts on me. Did you know it was named after James Denver, who at the time, it goes back to General William Larimer, if I pronounce it right, because obviously it's known in the square as the oldest part in Denver, which I'm going to come back to. But right. He was currying favour with the then senator, therefore he said he was going to call it Denver after James Denver.
I understand that the senator had already died. Is that right?
I don't think he died, but he certainly wasn't in post, was he? So,
So he didn't curry much favour. Yeah, originally I think the city was named after a place in Georgia, because originally I think it was set up as a gold mining town. So I think it was originally called something like Aurora or something like that.
Didn't have much gold, did it? That was the problem with it.
That is a problem for a gold town.
You do realise, of course, it was all about the railways. Now, the Union Pacific, decided not to visit Denver. Big mistake. They went via Cheyenne, apparently. But the Denvans, or what do they call people from Denver? Denvonians, or?
Not Devonians. That's where I come from. I don't know. Devenarians.
Okay,
I don't know.
That's very good. I like to put you on the spot. But the good news is they built their own Denver Pacific Railway. And that was the turning point, because its position, obviously in the middle of the Rockies, linking both the West and the East, has built on town. Because it's quite unique in that most cities, if you go back pre-railways, have a river going through them, don't they? If you think about it, London, New York, etc. Not Denver.
It's kind of in a valley, isn't it, Denver? With all the, mountains to the west of them. So I guess it always had a place as a, stopping off point before you hit the mountains.
Yeah.
Before you hit the Rockies. Have you ever had altitude sickness in Denver?
I have, because obviously being an asthmatic, and on our very first trip, we stayed in Denver and then drove up to Breckenridge, which obviously is much closer to the Intercontinental Divide. And being asthmatic, the air is pretty thin up there. It makes you, when you start walking up steps or whatever, it's a bit challenging.
Yeah, they have 58 peaks in Colorado, which are over 14,000 feet. A friend of mine, he's not the only one who does this, but a number of people try and climb all of those 58 peaks.
And we're going to return to peaks because it's one of the things I've missed. There were two things in Denver which I'm told you should do. I've missed out on, Julian. So let's cover them now. The first one is the Red Rock Amphitheatre, famous for the U2 concert, which I've not seen. And the other one was...
Beatles played there.
Did they? Didn't know that.
They did.
And the other one is Pikes Peak. And when I only found out about it through Michael Portillo. For the American audience, a UK politician, or failed UK politician, who's now had a second career. And surprise, surprise, what does he do, Julian? He travels on trains and takes us around the country. Or indeed, on his great continental journeys, showed us Pikes Peak. Now, have you been up Pikes Peak, Julian?
I have not.
Now, I've only seen it on the TV. It's got the most fantastic journey up it on a train, and literally the train goes right to the peak with phenomenal views across the Rockies. When
you say a train, is it it's got tracks beneath it?
Yeah, it's a cog railway, of course. It's going up some height there. Yeah. So I've not done that.
Have you talked enough about railways now?
Nice railway station in Denver.
Okay. Just let me know when you have, because I can wake up those listeners who've temporarily fallen asleep from your railway journeys.
Well, and I was going to just check you if I can find my notes on, was it Lobo, Julian, where the railway station is? You know Lobo? Lower downtown, apparently, which has been renovated or rejuvenated or whatever. Very nice.
It was rejuvenated when I went there, full of these sort of micro breweries and gastropubs, isn't it? I mean, we had a good time.
I didn't, Julian. I saw England go out against Portugal in the Euros. Very disappointing. Yeah, I was there. Yeah. So you asked me about other things we should go and see. Well, of course, the Art Museum. Have you been to the Art Museum in Denver?
I went to one of them. I think there are two.
Okay. Shall I tell you my story about going around the Art Museum, Julian?
Yes, please do.
One of the only occasions I felt...
Are you sure it was in Denver? You're not going to tell this story again?
No.
Absolutely. When we cover some other city.
Like Atlanta. No, this was in Denver. And it's one of my few occasions where I've ever felt like a celebrity. Joan and I, we were walking around the museum, and we were approached by a very nice American couple who asked us, are you from... I suspect they said Britain, but, are you from England? And then they asked us, what is going on? Because when we were there, Julian, we'd gone out of Brexit. They said, how can you possibly have done this? Okay? And then we got into very detailed political...
Well, you're a big Brexit supporter, no doubt that you were able to tell them in great detail.
But what I was really able to say is, sometimes you can't control things, and obviously not everybody supports this, but I fear that you may be having a similar situation coming in the not-too-distant future. And they said, what might that be? I said, the election of Donald Trump. And he will never get in, they reassured me. There is no chance of Donald Trump being president. Just how wrong they were, Julian. Just how wrong they were.
I was in LA, and this was before Trump had announced his candidacy. And I was in Hollywood, and this madman approached me. I thought, he's mentally ill. I'll sort of be kind, and then I'll move on. He was haranguing me and telling me, mark my words, he said, Trump is going to be president. And I obviously put it down to the ramblings of a madman, but he was very prescient, this man in Hollywood.
Okay. And you can't name him?
So you and the madman in Hollywood, they were both prescient.
Okay, so back to Denver. So let's stay within Denver confines for a second, because the other thing is, my very first visit, as I do, I get a guidebook and I'm looking around, and it talks about the old town. You must go and see the old town. And I'm thinking, is it going back to Lorimer Square again is the old town.
Yes.
And we walked all over this town, looked high, looked low, eventually got to the place. And do you know what? It was a few, very small number, maybe 5 buildings built in 1900. I had to point out to people, Julian, that's not the old town. I was there with me thinking Tudor or, medieval, old town 1900. No. Although very nice in terms of people watching and restaurants, but not distinctly old.
I remember in New England somewhere going to, it wasn't a stately home, but it was a historic home. The person giving the tour was, telling me how wonderful it was. And this home was built in 1935, how old it was. And I was thinking to myself, I've never owned a home which was younger than that. So for me, it wasn't a big deal. In that part of New England, that was clearly a big deal.
Other things to visit in Denver. If you're going, and you know how we like baseball, Coors Field,
right.
Good place to go to, in the centre of town, very pleasant way to spend an afternoon. I've not seen the Broncos on their stadium, although again, it's very nearby, isn't it? So you can see it. I've not done that.
All of them are fairly close to downtown, if not in downtown. So you've got the Broncos, the Rockies, the Rapids, which is the soccer team, Avalanche, which is the hockey team, and the Nuggets as well. Have you ever played golf in Colorado, Michael?
No, I don't play golf, Julian.
Because it's so high up, your ball will travel 10% further than normal. And of course, that's the issue within baseball. Why the Rockies can never get good pitchers, because the pitchers are very reluctant to go and ruin their ERAs by pitching somewhere where very frequently their balls fly out of the stadium.
Gosh, well, I didn't know that, Julian. That's yes. I can see that will be a bit of a bummer for signing up-and-coming pitchers. They don't play there.
That's right. Well, they can sign the young ones who don't get much choice, but the older ones, they're reluctant to go there.
Okay. Now, the other thing
But great place to watch baseball because you get lots of runs.
Yeah, and it's very pleasant. You can see the mountains. Now, a couple of things for visitors to Denver. You've obviously flown into Denver airport, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, it's nowhere near Denver. It's a long way out. It's a very long way out. And though they've now built a railroad into town, given all the space out there, why they pitched it so far, I don't know. It's a long way out.
When I went there about 30 years ago, it was new. So maybe there was one which was closer a long time ago. I mean, it's a fairly big metro, isn't it? I think it's something like 3 million people in the metro area. So maybe they were anticipating it getting bigger and just putting it further out of town. So is it like Heathrow to London? Is it that distance or is it further?
Yeah, except what's really interesting, because you travel in and for a long time you don't see anything. You can see the mountains in the distance. It's more typically plains, but it's a long way. So if you're going to, hire a car, it's a good 35, 40-minute drive back into town. And brings me to my second story here, Julian. This is my chance to stick the knife in on British Airways. Okay, you ready?
Oh, yeah. Are we going for the British Airways sponsorship, are we?
Here we are. So the last time I went, big birthday, special flight.
Was it your 80th birthday, Michael?
You're too kind, Julian. Pitched up and the beloved had tried to log me on before and hadn't been able to, and obviously questioned them, and they said, don't know, it'd be okay on the day. And when we paid, I'd been bumped. She hadn't, but I had, into economy, Julian. Michael being Michael said, I'm not leaving here till I get a satisfactory answer. Get me the most senior person from British Airways. Come and talk to me. By this time, obviously, queues behind me. They're drifting, trying to move me off. But no, I'm sitting there. And I have to say, in fair dues, the guy was absolutely straight down the line. He said, Mr. Moran, first of all, you need to appreciate all airlines do this. We've been doing this for 25 years. And wait for it, it's the way we maximise profits. We always sell more tickets than we have seats for. And sometimes everybody turns up. I was like, excuse me, you tell me you're selling things you haven't got and you think this is an acceptable business practice. But no, that's not the end of the story, Julian, because we get on the plane. Oh, by the way, sat next to a very nice Frenchman who told me he never flies Air France because he gets bumped all the time. And it was the first time he'd been bumped by British Airways. So we get to Denver. And if you're travelling from London, it's about an 8-hour flight. It's a long time, isn't it?
Oh, probably longer, I think.
You've left, and say you've left midday. It's equivalent of midnight out there, and we get to the baggage hall, and I wait, and I do see in the corner of my eye a British Airways representative, and the luggage comes off Julian, and not mine and Jones. We sit there, and eventually, with nobody else in the hall and no luggage, there's a sign, "Well, Mr. Moran, please go to the British Airways representative who's been cowering in the corner," who then tells me with some delight, "Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Moran, we didn't put your luggage on the plane." Because we didn't think you were going to get on the plane, apparently. So I have to say, now, it had one really good thing, which is...
So this is your attempt to get British Airways sponsorship, is it?
Absolutely.
To tell this story.
Yeah. But they did...
where they screw up twice.
They did send me a check.
I think I'm going to take sponsorship away from you, Michael.
They did send me a check, but I tore it up. But no, there is a serious point around for British visitors, because it has one good thing. Of course, when you get into Denver, we were so tired, we go straight to bed at the Four Seasons, really good hotel. And what happens is you wake up early next morning, very early. And of course,
yes,
other than the toothbrush that the Four Seasons have provided us, we have no clothes, no nothing, no toiletries. So we go walking around Denver. And I do like an American city, seeing it opening up. So it's a Sunday morning, and actually, I should know the name of the street, but a very nice sort of walkway to the centre of Denver with trams. And actually, it was a pleasure to see the city come into light. So it wasn't all bad news.
Right. Okay, that's good. Anything else that you would like to say about Denver?
Outside of Denver, so you should absolutely take a car and drive into the mountains, because Denver, although it's high up, it's not in the mountains. I said before,
right.
Breckenridge is very pretty, very much of what I call a Christmassy type place. Lots of quaint shops. Obviously, and the times I've been in the summer, so I've not seen the mountains in the winter. But a very big ski resort. Ditto Aspen, obviously very famous for wealthy Californians, and Vail. And Vail is one of these very modern creations of a ski village, but very pleasant. So definitely would recommend doing that.
And let's give the listeners an idea of altitude here. So Denver, or at least the 13th step of the capital in Denver, is 5,280 feet above sea level. There are 58 peaks in Colorado, which are over 14,000 square feet. So you are, when you rent a car and you go into the mountains, you are climbing a long way.
What's the height of the Continental Divide?
I don't know, but do you want to explain to listeners what the Continental Divide is?
Absolutely. Well, and it's geographically, it's interesting because obviously at the highest peak, the water runs both ways. Water runs both west and east. So you're actually at the highest point. And of course, it runs all the way down the Rockies, down the left-hand side of America. Is that correct?
That's right. There's a ridge of mountains which goes across, from north to south, essentially, down America. And on the left-hand side of this ridge, all the water will eventually end up in the Pacific. And on the right-hand side, all the water will eventually end up in the Atlantic. And that's called the Continental Divide. And actually, there is a walking trail which approximately follows the Continental Divide that you can do. It's a bit like the Appalachian Trail.
The challenge of the early pioneers who were trying to go from east to west, because this is a very formidable obstacle, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And it's pretty. I mean, really beautiful, these mountains, whether in the winter or the summer.
Yep. And the other thing, of course, you've got, because it's obviously famous for minerals, is old mining towns. And when you've got old mining towns like Leadville and Georgetown, Julian, what do you get? Train journeys.
Oh, God.
Train journeys.
Again.
So, and the good news is, because they're old mining railways, you go into the mountains and get some fantastic scenic views. That's the only reason I'm pushing it to you, Julia. Georgetown and Leadville, really good scenic views on the railways.
Okay. Now, did you do any drinking in Colorado, Michael?
Well, obviously, we drowned our sorrows in the microbrewery downtown after the defeat by the Portuguese.
Because some people claim that at altitude you get drunk quicker.
Well, I'm sure that's the case.
Well, it's not true.
Why not, Julian?
I'm sorry to tell you, it's not true. People believe it is. What actually happens is that the effects of the alcohol are more pronounced at altitude. So you feel as if you're drunker, even if you're actually not drunker. And the effect of the hangover the next day is a lot worse.
Julian, just remind me again. I was saying you say it's not true, and then you say it feels worse and you get drunk quicker.
People perceive that they are drunker because the effects of altitude, which they're having anyway, because they've just gone from sea level to, however many thousand feet, the effects of that altitude sickness are more pronounced because you're drinking alcohol.
Would it be fair to say, though, Julian, so that if you're going to Denver, I didn't find Denver that difficult in terms of altitude. It's more when you go into the mountains, so the Vales and the Breckenridge, which are that extra 2,000 or 3,000 feet up.
I think there are some people in Denver who find it difficult, but I think the reality is that most people don't. It doesn't hit them to about 8,000 feet. Now, did you partake of the wacky backy, Michael?
Absolutely not. Although I do know now, because actually, when was it legalized in Denver? I would say
I don't know. I mean, I haven't gone there since they legalized it. Not out of principle, but just because I haven't been there.
But certainly recently, isn't it? It's not in the last, 5 years?
A friend of mine set up a company providing software services to marijuana companies, and he did that about 4 or 5 years ago. So I think probably about 4 or 5 years.
I mean, the other thing about Denver, because it is high up, the weather's fairly unpredictable as well, isn't it? It's not uncommon to get very severe. You start the day with a beautiful, sort of clear blue sky, and in the end of the day with thunder and very heavy rain.
Well, they do have more than 300 days of sunshine a year.
Yeah.
Which is more than San Diego. So they have a lot of very good weather. And in the summer, not at all unusual to get into the 90s, occasional get into the hundreds. But obviously, they have the snowstorms as well.
Well, I suppose it's changeable. Having driven from Denver in clear blue skies, get to the mountains, having snow. I went on the Continental Divide on the 4th of July, and it snowed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Unpredictable, I would say, the climate.
Take a sweater is what you're advising.
Absolutely.
Good. So anything else you want to say about Denver?
I think it's a nice place. I've always found the people there very, very hospitable. Lots of universities and colleges is my perception as you walk around.
There are, I think, 3 in downtown alone, I think.
Yeah.
And then they've got the University of Colorado, which is in the city of Boulder, which is a fairly short distance away. I haven't actually been to Boulder, but I understand it's it's a really beautiful town.
Yeah.
I mean, Colorado, I think, is full of beautiful places.
Yeah.
I certainly would recommend it to anyone who wants to travel in the summer. It's a great place to go.
I mean, having not been in the winter, because obviously it's famous for its skiing, really, isn't it? So,
right.
So I mean, and I'm imagining Julian.
I don't do skiing, so.
And I imagine Julian in season, the places like Vale, Breckenridge are very full. You get a sense in the summer they are big tourist places.
They go for people with money, and they are full of people with money. So, but I've never done it, and I'm not likely to. But I understand that, if you want to go skiing in America, the mountains in Colorado or Salt Lake City, those are the places to go.
So, where in your list of cities to visit would Denver be?
Well, I would say if we were using our normal 5-point scoring system, I would give Denver a 4 out of 5. I do think that Colorado is a really beautiful place. Whether, on my first trip to America, I would make that to Denver, I don't know. I don't know whether I would do that. But I would love to go back to Denver and Colorado. It's incredibly beautiful. Yeah, I would speak pretty highly of it. And you?
Yeah, so I'm like you. It's definitely a 4 out of 5. I think you're right. If you've not been to America, it wouldn't be the first place to go to. But if you like the great outdoors and you're looking for sort of fresh air and fantastic scenery, it'd definitely be up there. So I'm 4 out of 5. I mean, having been there 3 times and still wants to go back because of things I've not seen, that's the highest commendation I'd give it.
We've covered drive-in movies in a previous episode, episode 8. And in this episode, we're going to now cover other types of drive-thru. And we're going to begin with a short excerpt from my book, High, Wide and Handsome. The other shopping element that is different in the US is the prevalence of drive-thru shopping. It seems that most things can be bought via a drive-thru. Restaurant food, of course, but drive-thru dry cleaning, pharmacy, banks, coffee shops, florists, and liquor stores are typical here. Supermarkets, too, are beginning to experiment in this area. A few specialist drive-thrus exist. In Las Vegas, you can tie the knot at a drive-thru wedding. In many places, you can get some not-so-cheap thrills at a drive-thru strip club. And a couple of funeral homes offer a drive-thru option where the curtains open for 3 minutes for you to pay your respects. You can look at the open coffin, usual here I'm afraid, for one last time before the curtains automatically close 180 seconds later. Michael, how many of these drive-thrus have you experienced?
Clearly not as many as you, Julian, because I was thinking about this in preparation. So I've done drive-thru McDonald's. I've done drive-thru Starbucks. And then so I haven't done a drive-thru bank. I've definitely not done a drive-thru funeral hall or wedding place. So I'm sort of a bit ambivalent to them, if I was brutally honest. I mean, it's a very efficient way to get fast food, but other things to commend it to them? Not sure, Julian. What about you?
Actually, since I wrote the book, there has been quite a lot of innovation in drive-thrus. One of them I'm sure you'll be familiar with is the COVID drive-thru, the COVID testing drive-thru.
I'm not sure, Julian, that doesn't count. No. A COVID drive-thru.
Do you not have that in Britain?
Well, yes, we do, but I'm sorry, you're taking I'm thinking, sort of places that you want to go to and experience sort of fun. A COVID testing station.
Well, I don't know that a funeral home is fun.
I didn't know about it until you told me about them.
No. Well, anyway, so COVID testing here is pretty much all done through drive-thru. I note that there has recently I think in Colorado and California, there are some drive-thru marijuana places. Cheech of Cheech and Chong, he set up a drive-thru marijuana place somewhere.
So I have to stop you again, Julian. So the law, I understand it's been legalised in certain places. I can't believe marijuana smoking and driving have been legalised.
As I understand it, most of this is food-related, munchies, related to the side effects of partaking of the wacky-backy. And then there's the Democratic member for Pennsylvania House of Representatives. He does his surgeries all drive-through. So there's a whole range of different innovations which have happened. So what do I think about them is your question. I use quite a few of them. So the banking ones, they're excellent. You don't have to get out of the car and go to the ATM. If you've got another banking transaction, you don't have to do anything there. They've got this sort of vacuum thing. I don't know if you've seen them at all. So let's say you're
have you
paying
not done
in a
online
check.
banking? I mean, you're living in a different area. People don't go to banks
I've done
anymore.
online banking, of course.
People don't go to banks anymore. Why would you go to a bank?
They're big here still. They still have banks here. So if you've got something that you want to pay in, for example, then it's like a vacuum cleaner. So you put your piece of paper that you want them to look at, and it sort of goes up this hose into the bank, and then somebody receives it and then says, "Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Moran. I'll now put that into your account." I like the banking and the ATM, not having to get out of your car to get money.
Stop, Julian. Before you move on banking, you see, I have visions of "Are you being served?" So the whole departmental stars where you put your whatever in and it sucks its way through, Julian. Again, I hate telling Julian, you can now scan in checks. You don't need to go.
Well, I know. I'm aware. To be honest, I only really use the ATM for getting cash out of the ATM. So pharmacies, most people will not go into the pharmacy. They'll just go to the pharmacy window. They'll deposit their prescription, and then they'll either be served immediately or they'll come back half an hour later, and the prescription will be ready for them.
Julian, pharmacy for you. Again, you order online, it comes through the post. I'm making the case, I'm not sure there is a long-term future for the drive-thru.
If you're getting more heart medicine, you may not have time to wait for it to get through the post. If you're sick and you getting some antibiotics, you don't want to wait 5 days for it to come in the post. You might be dead by the time it arrives. We didn't go for the drive-through wedding option. I suggested it, but Lorna wasn't very keen. We've done the COVID testing multiple times as the drive-through. Dry cleaners, very common. We don't really use dry cleaners that much, but instead of having to get out of the car, you just deposit it at the window and then a couple of days later go and pick it up.
Dry cleaner, very good. She comes to us, picks up, drops off. Don't need to go outside the house.
Okay. Emissions, getting your emissions done. The equivalent of your MOT. That is done through drive-in. You've got to once a year, if your car's over a certain age, you've got to take your car and its emissions are tested. And that's done while you're still in the car. Getting an oil change on your car is done. It can be done through a drive-through. So you drive through, as you drive, they lift your car, they take out your old oil, put in new one, and then you drive off again. It's convenient. I like the way that Americans think, how can we make this a little bit easier for people? You've got a different view.
Well, I just don't see there's a future for them. I accept that you're looking at something where people are trying to think outside of the box for creative solutions to things that you probably do. But the drive-through, I just can't see having any sort of long-term future.
So I've got very addicted to a website in preparation for this podcast, and that website is QSR magazine, which I think stands for, the QS stands for quick service, and they cover fast food restaurants. What percentage of food at fast food restaurants is ordered through the drive-through, Michael?
Well, I'm going to say no more than 10% because, again, the model's different, isn't it? You have Deliveroo, Just Eat. You're online, it's brought to you. You don't go to pick up your food, do you?
42%, Michael. So you saying there's no future, 42% of their revenues come through the drive-through. They did some brilliant surveys, and we're actually going to link this now to... You remember the episode we did on eateries, Michael?
Yes, we did. Absolutely. Cracker Barrel, never forget it. Never forget it.
Well... First, let's get the bad news out of the way first, yeah? First of all, Waffle House has no drive-through.
Well, that's presumably because you have to experience inside to see the fights. Otherwise, you can't see them from your car window. You miss a very substantial part of the action.
It's actually, you've got to be in there to enjoy it. So, so that's the first thing. The quickest is Taco Bell. It only takes 4.46 minutes from somebody when they arrive at the beginning of the drive-through till when they get their food.
But if I remember correctly, Julian, I'm sorry to be, it was a daughter A or daughter B's boyfriend was somewhat critical of Taco Bell, but basically the last place you go to if you wanted fast food. Was that right?
Well, to be honest, it is 4.46 minutes is actually longer than how long the food stays in your stomach afterwards. So it might be a poor accolade, but they're
quick.
Their food may be horrible, but they are quick.
Yeah.
KFC, 4.53 minutes. Dunkin' Donuts, 4.91 minutes. And the slowest, Chick-fil-A, 9 minutes and 1 second.
But what about McDonald's? The only one I've done on that phase. Yeah. So I've done McDonald's drive-through. So in London.
Average of 5 minutes something.
That's surprising.
Obviously, you can get quicker if you arrive there and then there's no one in front of you. It'll be quicker, but on average. They did these surveys. These are actual times. QSR magazine sent their best people out, and they sent them to thousands of different restaurants all over the US, and they averaged the times. And they found that McDonald's, 5 minutes.
I just need to know the rules again. So that was from giving your order to collecting your order, or was it actually arriving in the queue of the cars?
No, arriving to collecting.
That's actually quite a long time, because in my experience when I've done it at McDonald's or Starbucks, they're much quicker than that.
Well, I think McDonald's probably is quite quick, but the problem is it's quite popular because it's cheap.
Yeah.
So you rarely go and there isn't someone in front of you.
Okay.
Anyway, Chick-fil-A are revolutionizing the drive-thru at the moment. So COVID has made them rethink the line, because the lines outside Chick-fil-A are always the longest because it's the most popular. It's the best of that type of restaurant, to be honest. So normally what happens when you go to a drive-thru, you drive your car and then there's a big sort of billboard with all the various things that you can order. And then you speak into a big microphone, and then you order, and then someone at the other end confirms your order, and then you drive through to the first window, you pay, and then you go drive to the second window and you pick up your food. That's normally what happens. Well, Chick-fil-A changed that round. They've had people going outside their restaurant into the lines and taking the orders when people are further down in the line. They think they're getting served earlier. They're probably having to wait the same amount of time, but they think they're getting served earlier because they've got a point of contact with some nice person with an iPad and at an earlier point. Anyway, so they've got other data points. Accuracy of orders. Chick-fil-A is number one. 100% of Chick-fil-A orders were accurate in the survey that they did.
Now, Julian, before you move on again, you see, again, I have to take... Now, that's probably because there were Americans they were surveying. In my experience, with my accent, when I say to them, I want my sort of Big Mac burger, they say, big what? What? And in the past, the sound
But your diction is so clear, Michael.
That's right. I don't know, Julian. But the sound systems can be a bit hit and miss. You'll not be surprised that there's, it's never straightforward in my experience when I've done it.
Well, having been a regular on the QSI magazine site, I would have to recommend the headset produced by RF Technologies, the Apex model, for clearer sound quality. Because that bloody advert came up every time I went to a new page. So, anyway, so Chick-fil-A, 100% accurate. And actually, incidentally, while we're on it, my wife is not a big fan of drive-thrus, or at least she wasn't when she first came here. And the reason was the nervousness she got when she got to that microphone stage, that she either wouldn't be able to remember what the American word was, or they wouldn't understand her accent. So I think she has since got over this disability and is very comfortable with them. But initially she was like you, I think. So Chick-fil-A, Burger King is 97.2%. Bottom, Wendy's, 85.3%. So 15% of the time you don't get your right order. You get a typewriter or whatever they've confused it with. And then the third one I looked at was customer service. These guinea pigs were asked to rate service. They rated the percentage where they receive rude or lackadaisical service. Chick-fil-A, 0% of people received lackadaisical or rude service. However, Wendy's, 26.5% of the time people felt they received rude or lackadaisical.
I'm very surprised these little hamsters, that were buying these McDonald's or were getting such bad service.
Oh, I've got to eat another one. And I've been given Taco Bell.
Because they're quite cute, really, aren't the guinea pigs, I always thought.
Drive-thrus, I can't get enough of them. I have to say, I don't really use the food ones that much. But, I like the fact that somebody's taken a bit of time to think, how can I make this purchase a little bit more pleasurable and convenient for my customer?
Well, so you come back to the customer service. In my experience of drive-thrus, which I accept is limited, but it's one where they've really taken out of customer service. I mean, it reminds me, Julian, in an early episode, do you tip when you go through a drive-thru?
Right.
Do you? Because actually there is no customer service. Yeah. There's some guy says, I have number 6, number 5, and I won't say throw it at you, but 5 minutes later you get your food. It's minimal customer service, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't tip drive-thrus. I mean, I might do if it was a drive-thru funeral or something, I don't know. But I haven't used that one yet.
I suspect, Julian, you won't be that bothered about customer service if you're doing a drive-through. You spoke to Lorna about this.
For when Lorna's eyes, you've got to make preparations, haven't you?
No expense spared. I'm sure she'll be very pleased by that. So before we finish then, so I'm at the point of thinking this is something which is dead on its knees, and I'm quite reverent about it. But you like them. So what for English viewers who clearly will be very... By the way, there are very few drive-thrus in the UK. I mean, other than the fast food. It's just not there. So why do you like them? What's their most redeeming feature as far as you're concerned?
For example, if you're in the middle of a pandemic and you have to go to the pharmacy, it is much healthier for you to go to the pharmacy in your car, stay in your car, be separated by a screen and picking up your medicine than it is actually going into the pharmacy with all those ill people. That is a better solution to, in the UK, going into Boots, waiting in a line for 15 minutes with a bunch of other people who are, on their last legs, and then a few days later picking up whatever it is they went into the pharmacy for.
I'll give you that one, Julian.
Thank you.
That's the one advantage. Although, I repeat, you don't go to the pharmacy anymore. It comes to you. So, Julian, we're coming to the end of episode 24. Really good news. We have to deal with a bit of customer feedback, don't we? So, are you ready for this? Ray Taylor, that's the first one, said, we used a map of the US of all the places we had covered. He's referring to what we'd covered. And Ray Taylor observed there was a big gap in the middle.
Right, and a bias towards the East Coast, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Although we have been looking at San Diego, Dallas and Denver, we say to everybody, if there's a place you would like us to cover, and it doesn't matter that Julian hasn't been there, we're happy to take it, aren't we, Julian?
That's right.
Barbara Yazanka?
Okay, well, I actually happen to know Barbara, and this is a bit mean because her surname is spelt Xhajanka, and I happen to know that the first three letters are silent.
So Zanka.
Yeah.
Zanganka. And she asked us why we hadn't done Atlanta, which actually is a really good question, since you lived there for a long time. So we need to put that right, don't we?
Yeah, we're going to do that in the next couple of episodes, I think.
So that'll give me a chance for my rant about Atlanta International Airport, which is separate from Atlanta Airport. But anyway, that's
okay.
That's
it's not going to be the same story that you told about Denver Airport, is it? I know you like to recycle your stories.
No, absolutely not. No. Definitely. Conor O'Leary asked if we could do something on local slang. So we can add it to our list of subjects. But it's quite a big topic, isn't it, Julian? So we may have to divide it into pieces. And do you think, are there particular slang things that come to mind or that we can include in it?
Well, I think there's maybe something we do on accents, which is different from slang. And I think you've got old slang versus new slang, and then you've got the influence of slang. There's lots of different areas we could take that. So we'll talk offline, and then we'll figure out how to deal with that subject, deal with it in a couple of different ways.
And I was thinking, certainly, obviously, if you meet a true New Yorker, so that's a little bit like meeting a Cockney. There's a whole series of words that need translation for. So that one we should look at that. I should advertise the podcast is now on YouTube. So we might do some video content at some point. But for the time being, it's just a podcast. But I think we should go on video.
So if you do a search, if you do An American Journey, Julian Bishop, Michael Moran, or whatever those into YouTube, you should find our podcast there. But it is basically the same podcast as on your podcast provider. We've just got it on YouTube.
Okay. Finish it with a plea.
Well, actually, before you do that, Michael, I have a couple of extra things.
Do you, Julian? Are these on the spot that you're going to try and see what I know or don't know, Julian? That type
sort of.
Go on.
I've been transcribing the words of the podcasts so that there's a written version of what we've said as in addition to the audio version. And I've been using this very clever transcription software to do that. They really are marvelous, but I can report that these marvelous bits of software, they haven't developed well enough to transcribe your thoughts, Michael. It's struggling.
Yeah.
So, for example, you said trimming, stuffing roast potatoes, and that was transcribed as criminal stuff in most Catos.
Absolutely great.
I did enjoy it, and I'm going to put these transcripts online so people can view them. I'm going to do minimal editing.
Okay.
But
so two things,
they
Julian.
should provide for hours of entertainment.
I think our listeners will think you should get out more. You've not got enough on your plate if you're doing that. and the second thing, Julian, I'm going to say is it's a story that my son, who's profound dyslexic, and he got Dragon, I think it's Dragon software, and when it first came out, so he could talk into it and it would type. And he had terrible problems. It wouldn't work for him. And the teacher said, well, Mr. Moran, you should do it. Had exactly the same problem. So it's not news to me. So what's your second thing?
The second thing is, I understand you've been moonlighting, Michael.
Moonlighting me? How come?
Your own company has got a podcast,
Yes,
hasn't it, Michael?
that's right,
And you've
yeah.
been appearing on it.
I have. Not as frequently as on this one. 1080s Career Insights, very helpful. Available at Google Play and the App Store. But yes, I have a second podcast, Julian.
You told a very entertaining story about elevator pitches on elevators, didn't you, Michael?
I did, involving the Braffman brothers from Canada.
Have you yet told them about your story about purchasing the romantic package in any number of US national parks?
No.
Has that listenership got that one to come?
No, Julian, there are certain things you should keep separate. Professional and personal. And this is a personal podcast. With on my professional podcast, I've yet to introduce them to the subtleties of buying romantic packages on national parks.
Okay, so do you want to give people the title of the other podcast? We might as well throw some listeners their way.
It's called Career Insights. And by the way, it's not just me. I have done a number of things, but it involves the rest of the team, who are much more entertaining than me.
Surely not.
Absolutely.
So baseball, Michael, do you want an update on the baseball?
I do, because if I'm coming over in April, Julian, I want to see baseball. So are they playing or not?
Well, at the moment, not. No, they have a deadline of tomorrow. And if they don't meet the deadline of agreeing, then they have said that the season will not start on time. And they've said that players will not be getting their full pay for the year if the baseball season doesn't start on time. And they've been meeting every day this week. But aside from a couple of minor areas of agreement, I think that they are no nearer agreement than they were many months ago. There's always a delay between us recording this podcast and it coming out, but I wouldn't put a lot of money that there will be spring training baseball within the next couple of weeks.
And I get the sense that the relations between the owners and the players is still, to say the least, fractious.
So many strikes over so many years. I mean, it's there's just obviously a lack of trust.
Mm.
I cannot guarantee you baseball when you come over in April. I would like to, but maybe it will get sorted by then, maybe not.
Well, we can always go Little League, can't we?
We can go to Little League. They've got a nice Little League. Yeah.
Okay, so shall I go to my usual plea for our listeners? If you like what you hear, please ask us questions. Please review it on your normal favourite podcast provider. And tell your friends. Always happy to have more listeners, aren't we, Julian? And what have we got coming up, Julian? We're going to do, at the request of a listener, Atlanta vegetarianism, because Sarah Burgess is running the New York Marathon and wants to know where to get good food.
I think she's a vegan and she's running the New York Marathon and she wants to know whether she will be able to eat easily in New York. And we might as well extend that to how easy is it to be a vegetarian in the US?
Yeah, well, in New York, it'd be no problems at all, will it? But hey.
I wouldn't have thought so. No.
Midwest, more tricky.
I think the US is easy compared to France.
Okay. Well, more on this subject next time. So it's goodbye from me, and it's
goodbye from him.